I'm going to continue my commentary of this book right here. And we're going to talk about Mark chapter 7. Now, if you initially read Mark chapter 7, you might get a misinterpretation. Oh, wow. These Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes are the experts in sterilization. They know how to clean dishes, they know how to clean laundry, they know how to clean everything. And you get that if you just read it without properly interpreting this. And here's the problem. That's not what the story was all about. This was not about fighting bacteria and keeping yourself from getting physically ill. It had nothing to do with that whatsoever. What were the Pharisees actually saying? Well, let's compare that to what was happening in the 1950s and the 1960s with segregation. Basically, what the white guys were saying at the time was that the black guys were unclean, therefore we couldn't have anything to do with them. See the problem with that? Well, basically what the Pharisees and Sadducees and the Essenes were saying was this. Well, we have all these Galileans, they haven't paid their temple taxes, they haven't made their sacrifices to God, so anything they had in the line of sin made them unclean. And we couldn't be around unclean people like that. And anything they come in contact with is also unclean. So every time the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes were going through their ritual purity whatevers, what they were doing was they were actually insulting the Galileans who couldn't pay their temple taxes because they were broke. It was a personal insult to the Galileans. Well, Jesus shows up on the scene and he starts having a meal with these Galileans. The Pharisees challenged Jesus and Jesus said, hey, look, it's not what goes into your mouth that makes you unclean, it's the things coming out of your mouth that makes you unclean. Basically, what he was telling the Pharisees was that because they were misinterpreting the Torah, everything they were saying about the Torah was wrong. And that was making them unclean. So, basically, he was saying to the Galileans, was like, you Galileans, don't listen to these Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes because they don't know what they're talking about. I'm the Son of God. I do know what I'm talking about. Well, can you imagine what the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes did? They were like, oh man, you did not just say that. And that's what ticked off these Pharisees. Now you have to keep in mind, these weren't Pharisees as you would understand them. The real Pharisees were living in Jerusalem. These scribes were understudies of Pharisees, and they came out of Jerusalem and went into Galilee to establish the Pharisee rule over the Galileans. In other words, they were telling the Galileans how they were supposed to live. Well, Jesus would have none of this. And Jesus flat out insulted these Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. All these scribes. He told them, he says, I don't care what kind of scribes you are. I don't care if you are the understudies of all these Pharisees. The point is, everything you're saying is wrong, and I'm right. You can about imagine the religious battle that was taking place right then and there. It was quite an insult to them. Do you see now why it's so important to properly read the Scriptures? There you go. Now you have an interesting story. Jesus was not telling us how to fight bacteria. Jesus was telling us that the Pharisees were insulting the Galileans and they had no business doing that. That's what Jesus was saying. Alright, I will tell you more in a future video. Stay tuned.